So, I've recently finished episode Aigis The Answer. The expansion released this past September for Persona 3 Reload, which marks the final chapter of the game's story. Episode Aigis revolves around members of your party having found themselves trapped in a never-ending day of March 31st, following the revealed mysteries of the Dark Hour in the base game. Rather than battling through the Tower of Tartarus, the team now finds themselves trapped in the Abyss of Time, a mysterious dimension that has appeared underneath the dormitory where the flow of time has stopped. In order to return back to their normal lives, the team will have to journey through this dimension to uncover the reason for its appearance and the solution to end it. After having spent about 24 hours finishing it, there's unfortunately really not much to praise or write home about here. Having reviewed the base game several months ago, I don't really have much to say here that hasn't been said about the base game already, as this expansion is honestly just more of the same Persona 3 Reload you've already experienced, but not necessarily in the best way. Compared to the base game, I'll try to describe the expansion in terms of what has changed and what's new, and what has remained the same to give you a better idea whether this is for you or not. So, what has changed and what's new? For starters, Aigis is now the party leader. In the intro to the game, she gains the ability to summon multiple personas just like the base game's party leader, so effectively, her function as a character is the same. You also gain a new member to your party, a character named Metis, who, like Aigis, is also an Android Persona user. Character levels do not carry over from the base game. However, at the start of the expansion, your party's level is around 25, so you're not beginning completely from scratch. The game does contain its own separate Persona Compendium, and fortunately, your Persona Compendium from the base game does carry over into the expansion, but not without a few caveats. For one, both compendiums are separate from each other, so filling out the expansion's compendium can only be done by rediscovering and or fusing those personas again, or by summoning personas from your previous compendium and registering them under this new one. Summoning personas from your prior compendium may come with the biggest catch, as the cost to do so is significantly higher than before, and you are only able to summon a persona if its level does not exceed that of Aigis. As I mostly 100%ed the base game, I first thought this kind of screwed me, as I had awesome personas carried over that were unfortunately at level 99, so I had to scour amongst the lower level personas to make do. Fortunately, at the normal level of difficulty, the expansion didn't present much of an issue during my playthrough, and I was able to make steady progress without any blockers. However, if you've yet to complete the base game, this may be something to keep in mind. If you are not a fan of the innumerous social links littered throughout the base game, then you're in luck because they are completely gone from the expansion. Instead, you only get linked episodes, short segments where you spend time with a party member that concludes with them unlocking an additional personality trait for a permanent stat boost, or unlocking a new theurgy. These events stem from special items you receive from locked chests after major boss fights while in the Abyss of Time, so accumulating enough Twilight fragments to open all of these is highly recommended. These special items can also unlock armor upgrades for Aigis, which grant her additional abilities while exploring the Abyss of Time. Unlike the base game character, Aigis has a ranged option to ambush enemies from a distance, with the only drawback being that firing her gun alerts nearby enemies to her presence. She also gains the ability to dash through breakable objects, making the looting process faster and more efficient. Monad doors make a return, however the setup now involves multiple doors with increasing levels of difficulty and proportionate rewards. The rewards that drop are random, and even with party member equipment, you may receive duplicate items with buff effects, which are also random. Lastly, because within the game's story the date is stuck on a time loop, in the expansion you no longer have to be concerned about activities consuming time like you did with the base game. You can freely enter and exit the Abyss of Time, including the inside of your dorm, without locking you out or causing you to miss anything. Players who may not have enjoyed prioritizing their day-to-day activities in the base game may find the load taken off their shoulders in this area. As for what has remained the same, well, unfortunately just about everything else. Several areas and gameplay mechanics from the base game make a return here, albeit accessed in a more straightforward manner. This includes Paulownia Mall, the Velvet Room, the Great Clock, skill card duplication, and yes, Elizabeth's Request. The general gameplay loop from the base game is essentially just the same here, minus the social activities. The lack of social links and the fact that your party is stuck in the dorm definitely gives a different feel to the expansion, basically stripping it down to nothing but constant dungeon exploration, which again is just as repetitive as before, even at times down to floor designs being repeated throughout the 8 sections that span the Abyss of Time. I found nearly all enemies in the expansion to be repeated from the base game as well, without any twists. I think for an expansion at this price point, it isn't too much to ask for players to expect more novel combat, rather than being served the same as what they've already purchased before. Despite the repetitive nature of the game, the monotony is briefly broken up at the end of each section, with brief glimpses into the past of each of your party members, typically involving aspects of characters' lives spoken about in the base game that you never witnessed firsthand. Many of these are actually pretty good and insightful, and I wish more of the expansion consisted of story content such as this, as it would have made it a lot more interesting and impactful. With the base game, one of my critiques with its story is that I believed it progressed too slowly, and that remains the case with this expansion even more so. Don't expect any substantial plot with this expansion that adds to the story of the base game. I found it lackluster how, just prior to every major boss battle, there's a short scene of a mysterious figure running off screen, always one step ahead of you, without any explanation or further insight into the story that players would find engaging. It isn't until nearly the very end when the story actually does get interesting, including some clever battle scenarios as well, but by that point, the expansion comes to a rapid finish just when things are starting to get good, which I found rather disappointing. In closing, there's really not much to say about this expansion. I found it generally to be much of the same material stripped down from the base game and arranged in a different format. Is it worth it? Well, I'll say if nothing I've said so far sounded like anything that really bothers you, and you enjoyed the base game, then go for it. If you're on the fence, Episode Aigis was included in Game Pass Ultimate for free as part of their perks program. So if that offer is available to you, then that would be a much preferred way to check it out, aside from waiting for a steep discount. At the time of this video, the price for this expansion is $35 USD, which I think is too high for content that is mostly underwhelming, and that puts its price point near the territory of much higher rated expansions, such as Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree or Cyberpunk's Phantom Liberty, for example. So if you're at least mildly interested, just wait for it to go on sale and give it a shot. Otherwise, you're better off saving your money for something else. Well, that's it for the video, guys. As always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to be notified of when new videos release. Let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on episode Aigis The Answer. Did you have a different experience? What would you have changed about it? Let me know below. Till next time.